Hey everybody, and welcome to another instalment of Board Games Hitting My Table. So in this series I take a look at all the non-new to me board games that I've been playing over the last couple of weeks. This episode of course covering the second half of September 2022, just to give you an idea about what keeps coming off my shelf and hitting the table. Before I take a look at the games, I want to give a shout out to the show's sponsor, KIENDA.co.uk, who are my go-to online retailer here in the UK, and if you use my link in the show notes or the QR code, then you can get 5% off your first order. Now, I've actually been off work and I've had much more free time than usual, so I've got a lot more games played, so this might be a bit of a bumper episode, but I'll try to get through these games as quickly as I can. And I've actually had ample opportunity to get back and play some old favourites of mine, first of which being Terra Mystica. So I say old favourites, but I actually only got to play Terra Mystica for the first time last year, despite this one being, highly revered. And once I played it for my initial few turns and got my review up, it kind of just sat on my shelf dormant for a long time, and I really had the urge to get this one back to the table, but I was a little bit apprehensive to do so because I had this weird stigma in my mind that this was much more heavier than I remembered it, because I got this to the table yesterday in a 3-player game, and it was remarkably easy to teach, much easier than I remembered. I probably got a 10-minute teach of this done, and everybody knew exactly what they were doing, and it was a wonderful game. I had a great experience with it, flowed beautifully, everyone understood, and it was a nice, fun game. Now, we actually played, the three factions we used were the Swarmlings, the Chaos Magicians, and the Nomads. Now, I was the Chaos Magicians, and I did not utilise my powers at all, which was a big, a big mistake on my behalf, because I just completely fell behind. And the first, say, half of the game, the first 3 rounds, I just did not get a good engine going, which is completely my fault. But regardless of that, I still had a great time. If you're not familiar with Terra Mystica, it's a cool game where you're trying to get all your buildings out on the main board here, which is made up of all these different hexes, and then before you can put your buildings on there, you have to terraform the land, because you can only inhabit a certain type of terrain, and then you're trying to get all these buildings down. The more buildings you get down, the more income you get, but when you upgrade buildings, you are kind of decreasing your income of one thing. A very cool little balancing act there. Again, this game gets so much the word of mouth about this game is that it is very complex. It is a pure Eurogamer's game, and I actually disagree with that. I think this is, I would say it's medium heavyweight, but I could see a whole wide variety of people enjoying this one. And I wouldn't be put off if people do deter you by saying this is really gamey, because it's not that bad. Imagine if you're playing with the same people again and again, or if you're playing inexperienced compared to your opponents, then you could probably get smashed in this one. But if you're all playing with a level playing field, then it's a great experience. So that is Terra Mystica. Thoroughly enjoyed that one, and it's shot right back up my rankings, because just passively it's fallen down over time, because again, I've not played it, but now I've refreshed it in my mind, it's just shot right back up, and yeah, it's fantastic. Talking about some old classics, I have played another 3-player game of Hansa Teutonica. Now, I will say I don't think 3 players is the optimal player count. The board's a little bit open at that player count, but it's still a great game as you're trying to build these routes, connect cities with each other. You're trying to build a cool engine, and you can basically you can invest in lots of different things, such as being able to take more cubes into your supply, being able to build in the harder to build in regions to give you, or let you break ties and spread your influence elsewhere, being able to take more actions, and everything is really inviting. However, probably earlier in the game, people are going to set up these trade posts, meaning that whenever you do an action, they'll get points for you doing that. So it has a lot of cool interaction here, and it's just one of my favourite Euros. Really pure, and it's kind of a throwback to a time when Euros had nothing superfluous, and it was all just streamlined to the core. And Hansa Teutonica is just a perfect example of that. And again, one of my favourites, top 20 game for sure. So lovely to get that one back to the table as well. And I've still only played the base game map, despite having the big box here. So next time I need to make a conscious effort to try one of the new maps. Something a bit different now. We played a 2-player game of Tumble Town. So Tumble Town was a Kickstarter from a couple of years ago, and this is from the same designer as Calico, actually, Kevin Russ. But this is a lighter affair as you are trying to basically build up this town of dice. And you're going to do that by drafting cards, you're going to be rolling the dice. But all these, you're going to acquire these blueprints of these buildings, and they all require different things. Like, for example, this building here needs to have 4 yellow bricks in it, which are 4 gold dice, essentially. And they all have a restriction on as well. Like this one says it needs to be at least a value 9. is in the total value of those pips. And that's basically the flow of the game. You're just drafting cards, building these buildings. You've got a little bit of a spatial puzzle here as certain blueprints need certain restrictions. Like I might say, well, this spot needs to be at least 3 tall. And it's just a really nice little game. One that I think I've talked about on a few lists before, saying I'm surprised this game wasn't a bigger hit. Now, I think a big part of that is because of the graphic design. So the actual artwork on the cards is pretty dreadful and it looks prototype level basically. But the gameplay itself is certainly just, waiting to be re-implemented, I think, or waiting to be reskinned. New artwork, nice fresh design, because this has a lot of kind of check marks of things that are usually popular, dice play, card drafting, and all that kind of stuff. And this is a nice game. So that is Tumble Town. Going back to the old classics now, we played a 3-player game of Ra. So introduced this one to a new gamer and somebody who had played it before. And I recently got rid of this game and I reacquired it because I missed it, and I'm so glad I got it back because that game was fantastic. I really enjoyed every second of it. I didn't do very well. I think I was kind of running away with the pharaohs for most of the game. I'm getting a lot of points that way. And actually, the new gamer managed to win the game, and yeah, fair play to him because he really did utilise all his bidding tokens to their maximum efficiency. Never really, never finished the epoch without spending all his bidding tokens and getting a bunch of tiles for them. So yeah, really, well, it's a classic bidding game. If you're not familiar with this one, go check it out. I know there is a recent reprint. And it looks beautiful, but I've got the classic LA one here, which I'm happy with because it fits right in my collection, as in the box size. So yeah, I'm glad I've got Ra back, and I've got it back to the table pretty quickly, and yeah, loved it. On continuing with my old favourites, this is Trajan. So we played a 3-player game of Trajan. This is actually one of mine and my brother's favourite games, is in top 3, top 3 level, so best of the best. And we introduced this one to my mum actually, and it completely clicked with her. She got invested very quickly. Really enjoyed her play of it and had nothing but good things to say. And it really did just revitalise my, it reminds you why I love doing, board gaming, because, I do play a lot of new games. Sometimes they are, a little bit short of the mark. But when you go back and play the absolute best, it just reminds you about how good these games are. Because when you have that breadth of knowledge, it just puts everything in perspective. But yeah, Trajan for me is Feld's best game. It's a bunch of mini games all held together with a Mancala system, which is color coded. So you can actually go land on spots and get additional bonus if you line up the correct colours, which is a puzzle in itself. I love the way you can foreplan in this game, just lining up turns, keep on spamming the same action if you do things accordingly. I think strategy-wise, I kind of went for a mix of military and senate. I did really well earlier in the game, which tends to be a thing in this for me personally. I always seem to have a strong start. I really kind of have a big lull in the middle, and then towards the end I start to pick up again. And that is what happened in this game, and I actually did manage to squeeze a victory. I don't often win this game actually because my brother is exceptionally good at this game, but yeah, I managed to win this one. And yeah, it was a real cool that everyone went for a different strategy. My mum was spamming the 9-point tiles. I think my brother was going for the forum here. So it was cool that we had a very close game, all went for a completely different path. Of course, dabbling in the different things, but yeah, this is just as good as it gets if you want a dry Euro. Trajan is just exceptional. Still got quite a lot to go through here, so I'll try to be as quick as I can. I managed to get a 3-player game of High Society. So this is the second Reiner Knizia bidding game. Of course, Ra being the first. Had a cool little game, only took about 15 minutes. I managed to squeeze a win on this one because the 4 dark card, which is the endgame trigger, came up pretty quickly. So it worked in my favour. My opponent spent more money. My brother was being a bit too slow and not buying anything. So yeah, it finished just at the right time for me, and I squeezed a win. And still love this one. Just a classic. And staying on the Reiner Knizia train, we played a 3-player game of High Score, which was just to finish the gaming night. And it was a lovely way to finish the game night, actually. I really enjoyed this one. And we had a good amount of, a bit like trash talking and things, just to amp up the experience. Just a pure dice rolling game where you're trying to basically do the best as you can according to these cards that come out. Like, for example, some might say, You get 3 rerolls. The sign here means a 10, and then you want to be creating runs of dice, and they're all like different criteria that you need to do in a Yahtzee style game. But it's very simple, but it works, and get a perfect little palate cleanser and something just to end the game's night on a high without sapping too much brain power. So that is high score. We also played a 3-player game of Condotti. Now, I understand this is not another optimal player count. It is better at 4 or 5, but still had a good time with this one. Actually, I introduced this one to somebody who hadn't played it before, and they absolutely annihilated us. They got those 3 regions next to each other pretty quickly. And I think basically the player who won just sat back in a fight where the other 2 players, me being included, invested too much cards into another region, which meant we couldn't stop him getting that 3rd pivotal region when he needed it. But this is a great area majority, area control card play game. It has so many cool little twists and turns, and just a dynamic experience, which has been one of my favourite games I've played over the last 6 months or so. Just a fantastic design, and it dates all the way back to the 90s. So goes to show this game has held up really well. So that is Condotti. Back to Reiner Knizia now. So I've not done this deliberately, but we played a 3-player game of Babylonia. Now, I think Babylonia is my favourite Reiner Knizia game. If I looked at my rankings, I'm pretty sure this one does rank the highest. This is a very simple route building game as you're trying to connect your symbols together. Well, there's no game board or anything on the back here, but this one, you're just trying to connect these routes by placing these tokens down, and once you've surrounded these cities, you can collect them and get points in that way. You can also try and create these chains and get like tons of points by grouping things together. A real kind of quick grab to try and get the best spots and build these networks, and it's just this is just elegance defined. I absolutely adore this game. It gets better with each time I play it, and I think every time I play it, it goes up a few ranks. So Babylonia is really due to rank high this year, and probably going to break into the top 25. It might even be higher than that if you look at the rankings below. So that is Babylonia. A few more games here that I don't personally own. The first of which is Golem. Now, I did own this one, but I decided not to keep it in my collection because I know I'm not going to play it very often. Now, I do like the game a lot. It's quite heavy, and that's even considering it heavy for a Simone Luciani design or co-design. But this one I ended up playing a solo mode actually, and I just thought, you know what, this is very clever, but it's a little bit too cumbersome for me, and it's going to take the very precise circumstance where I'm going to get this back to the table. So I thought, you know what, let's just bite the bullet. Let's move it on from the collection. But I enjoyed my time with it. I still recommend it to the right people. I have recently reviewed it, so check that out if you want to get more refined thoughts on it. But I decided this is not going to stay in the collection. But still, loads of crunchiness here, loads of decisions. It's kind of familiar mechanisms with a game like Grand Austria Hotel, where you're drafting marbles in this example to take actions. But go check out my review. That's what I'd suggest. The next one I played is the Taverns of Tiefenthal. This was the second time I played this little kind of dice drafting, almost deck building style game. As you're collecting these cards and then playing them out, trying to build a bit of an engine up, trying to get points in different ways and collect these nobles. Tons of upgrades you can do to get more and more efficient. And I enjoyed this one. It doesn't take too long. We only played a 2-player game, so it was nice and snappy. And I'd say, the first time I enjoyed it, the second time I probably enjoyed it equally as much. So just a pleasant game. Again, very bitty. There's lots of stuff everywhere. But the game itself is perfectly solid. So that is Taverns of Tiefenthal. And the third game that I haven't physically got a copy of is Pandemic. So I actually went back and played a 3-player game of Pandemic. Now, I haven't played Pandemic in about 4 years. I'm not a huge fan of cooperative games, but you know what? This was really refreshing, and I actually enjoyed this game a lot. So sometimes it's nice to play something that you don't normally play, just to break the pattern, I suppose. And we had a successful game. We won in quite strong fashion. Actually, we played pretty basic mode, but I think we played very efficiently. I think I had the guy who can pass the cards around even if you're not in the matching city, and one of my teammates had the one where you need 1 card fewer in order to cure that particular disease. So we did synergize with each other really well. And the third player had the quarantine guy, so the diseases couldn't spread if he was stood near. So it's a really nice complementary bunch of characters. Played in about 30 minutes, and it was just nice. I did really enjoy it, and it goes to show that these games do hold up for a reason. So that was Pandemic. Back to Reiner Knizia though, we played a 3-player game of The Quest for El Dorado. So this is a game that's gone through a bit of a weird pattern for me. First game I played it, I was lukewarm at best. I was a little bit underwhelmed because things just weren't working out and it didn't flow very well. Second game was much better. And yeah, it was a really close race. Now, the third play was close again, and this is the one I'm talking about that I've just played. But I still feel like there's a piece of the puzzle missing here. I don't know if it's just a fact of being a little bit too light. That might just be as simple as that. But yeah, I like this one, this idea of having a racing deck building game as you're trying to traverse all these hexes and be the first to reach El Dorado, of course. Cutting through trees and sailing down rivers. But yeah, I feel like the cards can either work in your favour or not. Which is fine. I mean, I do understand that's part of the strategy, trying to cull your deck down to be as efficient as you can. But yeah, I like it. I don't think I'll ever love it. But it takes about, it says 60 minutes here. I think you can get it paid in about 30 to 40 minutes. So yeah, it's nice. I just don't think I'll ever, again, truly love it. But yeah, we had a good game, I suppose. We played I think it was a 3-player game of Alice's Garden. So this is a polyomino style game, which normally is something I'm not overly keen on. I'm already tired of, I suppose, fatigued. But this one, I think this is probably one of my favourite polyomino style games out there, at least in relation to being a filler game. As you're trying to fill in this grid of yours, these tiles not only are obviously weird shapes, we try to fill in all these spaces, but they also have kind of these patterns on them, or these symbols on them, which will all do different things. Like, for example, you want these chess pieces to be on the chessboard, these mushrooms you want to be in columns, there's trees that you want to be in rows, all these kind of puzzly stuff that you'd come to expect from a little filler game like this, and it just works. It really does work. And normally I do really well at this game, but this time all the tiles that came out were just really clunky. They did not work with each other, so it was a very difficult puzzle to try and optimize, but I still loved it, and it's a really good filler game, and then hopefully will be more widely available soon. But I know KIENDA do stock it, so be sure to grab a copy for a good price, and it's a really good filler. Played a couple more games of Rapido. I'm not going to dwell on this one because I talked about it a lot recently, and I will be dropping my review soon. This is like Reiner Knizia's spin on Can't Stop, but really good one. I love it. That is Rapido. Played I think it might have been a 2-player game, maybe a 3-player game actually, of Get On Board. So this is a game I normally do terrible on because there's kind of 2 paths you can go. You can either try and stick to your kind of long-term objective by trying to connect these 2 points together by placing these little roads down on the map. Or you can kind of ignore that and just try to focus on delivering the passengers to their locations. Now, I normally do one or the other, and it normally tanks for me massively, and it just never works. But for some reason this time, it did work. Everything clicked into place. I managed to complete my big route. I still managed to get some good drop-offs on the way, and I actually won this game, which I never do. So this is one of the most charming little flip and write games out there. It's a re-implementation of Let's Make a Bus Route. Yeah, it's so nice that this is widely available now and you don't have to import it. So yeah, if you like simple little charming fillers with a flip and write element to it, then Get On Board is just a great shout. Played a 3-player game of Pergamon. So Pergamon's been hitting the table a lot recently. A lovely filler plus style game. You're talking about 30 to 45 minutes for this one. And it has one of the coolest little mechanisms in terms of getting money that I've ever seen, where you are essentially almost bidding for how much money you're going to get from this coin supply. So you're going to flip over 2 cards. They're going to have either chests on them or these money bags, which will show the potential of money in those bags or on those cards. And then you're using this little push your luck system by bidding your worker on one of these spots. The earlier you go, it means you get first dibs on what's in the bags, but the later you go, it means you're going to get the remainder of what's in the bag. So you can either kind of prioritize yourself and maybe take a smaller amount but guarantee you have it, or push your luck and think, you know what, let's just guess there's a big bunch of money in that bag and hopefully I'll get a big fair share of it. And then you're buying these artifacts and you're exhibiting them, trying to get points, essentially. Very simple. It's a Stefan Dora design, who's a really, really good designer. And this is just a lovely game that I think has aged really well. This is over 10 years old, I think. And yeah, I'm really happy to have this in my collection. And it's just a true hidden gem. So that is Pergamon. And finally, I managed to get a game of Mavi played. So Mavi is another tile placement style game, as you're not only spreading, you're also building vertically. But this has a cool restriction where you can only ever place the actual scoring icons on a column once per round. So you get tighter and tighter as the game goes on. You're trying to build, again, not only spread yourself, but build vertically because you get bigger multipliers when you place them. Tons of different options you can go down. Are you going to go for the quick grabs like I did in this game? In my personal game I just played, I tried to just keep on stacking my things as high as I could and get these bigger and bigger multipliers. Whereas my opponent very kind of dominated every single other other element of the game. So I really went for those quick grabs, got a ton of points and really ran away with it. But it really did come back and haunt me because, again, my opponents won every single row they got the majority of. They got the biggest cluster of things together. I think they even got the biggest cluster of empty fields. So it's like every other element of the game they dominated. So it goes to show that both different pathways you can take are equally viable. And I think this was one of my... this was actually number one in terms of my list that I made semi-recently called Top 10 Games That Should Have Been Mega Hits. Now, it's criminal that Mavi wasn't as popular as games like Azul or Cascadia. For me, this is even a stronger game than those, and it's just so accessible and it's just addictive and brilliant, to be honest. A true great design by Michael Kiesling. So there we go, that's a longer episode than usual. Hopefully you've enjoyed the video. Apologies if I've been rambling a bit, but if you have enjoyed the video, please be sure to hit like and subscribe to my channel and check out my other content too. Also be sure to keep an eye out for my monthly review in terms of all the new games that I've been playing, which will be dropping on the 1st of October. So I have a ton of great games that I've been playing and some pretty awful ones as well. So yeah, be sure to check that one out.